This is Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, a podcast and radio program presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. Most any contemporary musical style can trace its roots back to the blues. Time Signatures explores the blues and its musical connections with captivating interviews, lively discussions, and news from the world of the blues.
You know I'm crying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
And now, here he is, your host, Jim Ervin.
Baby, I'm home.
Yes, we are home. As a matter of fact, I'm home for real. I'm actually recording from my home out here in Mason, Michigan. I always tell people, you never know where I'm going to be. Sometimes it's Big B, sometimes it's at a park. But today I'm actually recording from the Casa de Ervin out here in Mason, Michigan. You know, every blues society has its beginning, and the Capital Area Blues Society out of Lansing, Michigan is absolutely no exception. The process took a little bit of time to put together, and as Cabs prepares to celebrate 30 years in the blues business, we are pleased to welcome the first president of the Capital Area Blues Society, Bonnie, just call me Queen B Stebbins. And we are also excited to have one of Cab's longstanding reviewers, former secretary and board member Ron Eggleston. Welcome to both of you. Glad to have you here at Time Signatures.
Happy to be here.
Me too.
Absolutely. And so excited to talk about the beginning, because I've been a member of Cabs now for going on 3 years. So I'm still a babe in the woods.
Yep.
But it's so exciting to talk about how things started, especially because I wasn't involved in the blues and in Cabs back in those early years, even though I was in the area. And I have to tell you, I'm kicking myself because I've missed so much of what you guys put together back in the day. The Capital Area Blues Society was founded on the following principle: dedicated to the preservation and enjoyment of, as well as the education about blues music. There's not much gray area there, is there?
That's what I intended when I came up with that.
Very cool. That was your deal?
Yeah, that was the motto I thought of.
Okay.
And it's because blues is everything to me, so.
Okay. Very good. And so we want to go back, because I know that it took some time to get things together and actually get the Capital Area Blues Society off the ground. So go ahead and talk about that a little bit, your early meeting. And
Okay. Well, way back in the day, 70s, 80s, I was a member of the Detroit Blues Society, and they were doing a lot of things, and there was so much happening in Detroit. They had a ton of great blues clubs that we would drive down to. 70, 80 miles one way, never thought much about it because that's where we could get our blues fix.
Sure.
So I, of course, got to know people in the Detroit Blues Society, and at that time, George Seedorf was the president.
Okay.
And I talked to him because I really didn't want to go through all the machinations of trying to start a blues society. And I'd thrown the idea out to some people, Scotty Allman for one, why don't you do it, But nobody wanted to take the bait. So I talked to George, why don't we have Lansing be like a branch of the Detroit one? And we kicked that around for a year or two of how would that work and what could we do and where would that go and is it really feasible even to do that?
Sure.
And it slowly became obvious that it was not. And so, again, I was hoping other people would pick up the ball and run because I had no clue what had to be done. And finally, it was obvious that nobody else was going to do that. So one night we were at Josh, who was the guy from Detroit? Josh?
Motor City Josh.
Motor City.
Oh, yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
We were at a concert at a club in Charlotte.
Okay.
I think John, the guy that used to do the bookings that lived in Charlotte. Anyway, so Motor City Josh was there.
Okay.
And I remember using a cocktail napkin of coming up with the name. Capital Area Blues Society. I was thinking also maybe Capital City Blues Society, but Scotty Allman's radio show was Capital City Blues Cruise. Mm-hmm. So I had the backup name of Capital Area Blues Society. And so that was my start, is get the name. And then once I retired from my state job, I actually had time to really pursue this.
Sure.
So on October 7th, 1994.
Okay.
I went to the Ingham County Register, I think, or the clerk, I'm not sure who took the paperwork, to fill out the paperwork to register the name. I guess it's a DBA, doing
DBA,
business
sure.
as,
Yeah.
which I didn't realize. I just thought I was registering the name so nobody else could use it. And then I started contacting, because I had all these blue CDs with all the label names and information, how to contact them. So I would contact the labels and bands and booking agents and have them put us on their mailing list. I got business cards. I got printed letterhead. Letterhead.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Letterhead.
All right.
A few months later, like about 7-8 months, in July of 95, there was going to be a blues festival in Lansing. And I think Scott Allman was part of the people that organized it.
I was wondering who got that underway. I know it was supposedly a fundraiser, I think, for maybe St. Vincent's.
Okay.
But that was the first time there was a bunch of national artists and regional, and then Root Doctor was part of it also.
Yeah.
And I believe was Coco Taylor a part? Yeah.
Yeah.
She was
and
the
Kinsey
headliner.
Report with Big Daddy Kinsey, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, and so once I found out the festival was going to be in town, it was a one-day event. And so I wrote and then printed flyers to announce a meeting at the Green Door Lounge.
Wow.
And before I, of course, announce the meeting on this paper, these flyers, I had contacted, I think it was Dave, but it might have been Al at the time, that was the owner, or maybe it was Al and Dave were both owners. But I contacted the Green Door to get permission to have our first meeting there. And he said that was fine. So I cleared everything with them. So again, put on the flyer where we would meet. And it was late July. And so I passed all these flyers. 4 other friends helped me pass the flyers out to everybody at the fest.
That's cool.
We handed them. We didn't just leave a stack somewhere.
Sure.
And we passed them out. And a good friend of mine, Shar Whitaker, who was also a huge blues fan and had been my roomie for like 17, 18 years for the Chicago Blues Fest. So she was helping get all this passed out and everything. And we had the first meeting, and probably 20 people showed up. And it was like, whoa, this could just work in Lansing.
Yeah.
And so from then on, and then people joined. So many people joined that. I think it was 16 people joined at that meeting.
16 at the first. I think there's 27 people showed up. And
Wow.
16
Okay, thank you,
joined.
because I'm going. I know not everybody joined. So that, so that was a big hoot. And then one of the amazing things to me is Cal Stone.
Yeah.
Who joined at that first meeting, obviously at the first meeting, and said, well, let's produce a newsletter. And we're all going, oh my gosh, there's no way we can do a newsletter. Like, he wanted to do it next month. And he said, no, I'm in the biz. I know how to do this. So let's jump on it and do it. And amazingly, we came out with a September issue.
Now, I got to stop you here for just a minute, because it's kind of cool that Cal Stone, all these names, people that are coming in and out of my life right now because I'm doing the podcast. Of course, Cal is the one, he and his wife put on the event in Brighton every year.
Right.
And so I actually got to meet him. We talked back and forth a couple times, and I'm going to actually be down there in Brighton for the blues and jazz event that he's putting on the first week of September.
Great.
And then, of course, we've got Blues Fest here in Old Town the following weekend. But it's kind of cool to me. I mean, Scotty Allman's been around forever.
Yeah.
Cal Stone obviously has been around forever.
Yeah.
And it's such a neat thing to see the longevity of what y'all started almost 30 years ago, because before the Capital Area Blues Society, there wasn't anything really happening in the Lansing area, was there?
Oh, there was. There were a lot of local bands. There
blues
were
related?
in the 80s. Yes,
Okay.
there were several. The Blue Avenue Delegates started in 1980. They had in the Green Door, and I don't know if they were organized before that. Mike Daniels was one of the kingpins of that organization.
Okay.
And I want to be sitting down talking with him about some things because he really is one of the early guys. But a lot of people in the area, a lot of people got interested in the blues. You had elderly instruments or a lot of good musicians there.
And it's amazing how many of them are active still today in the blues scene in the Lansing area.
Right. But I think it was, during the 60s when a lot of the rock groups like Led Zeppelin and Rolling Stones and Fleetwood Mac, the original version of it, were playing covers of blues songs. And then they really were boosting the blues, and a lot of white musicians in Lansing said, well, this is pretty cool. We like this music. And they started creating bands. I mean, I can go through the list of the ones that were around.
Let's talk about a couple of them, sure.
I don't know exactly all the dates of these things, but we had, as I say, the Blue Avenue Delegates. We have the Uptown Band.
And the Downtown Band, who later became...
Root Doctor.
Yeah,
right.
There you go.
And Scotty was in that. Scotty started his program, I think, in '87 on the radio.
Wow.
Yeah.
And the Downtown Blues Band, of course, featured Freddie Cunningham and his good friend James Williams, who was a great bass player. And so then they evolved into another band, the Root Doctor Band.
These guys have got notes sitting here on the table. It's so cool. I know you can hear the papers rustling in the background, but there's so much here to dive into, and I have a feeling we're going to end up doing a second episode here. So let me stop you for a minute. Let's back up for just a minute. And Queen B had the first few minutes to talk about the early beginning of Capital Area Blues Society. I want to step back and ask each of you individually, how did you discover the blues? What was your first taste of the blues? And usually it's ladies first, but you already talked to, so I'm going to go ahead and go to Ron, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, no problem.
Well, I was a rock and roll kid. I mean, I loved rock and roll. All the black artists were so much better than any of the whites. Of course, I liked Elvis. He was wonderful too. But I liked Chuck Berry, Little Richard, and Fats Domino, and
Jerry Lee.
Yeah, Jerry Lee Lewis. I mean, the excitement of rock and roll was something to me. But somehow, even though the slogan was the blues had a baby and they named it rock and roll, I was not really into the blues. I didn't know that much about the blues. Even after going to college, and I was in the folk scene in there, I liked folk music. But when I started working for the state, I had a good friend, Steve Baclita, who was a member of CABS for many years and did reviews and whatever, and is a musician as well. He and Bill Richards played together as a duo at times. And he started telling me, well, you should be listening to Muddy Waters and listen to a few of these blues guys. And boy, once I started listening to them, I said, this is great. Well, and in fact, there was a group at MSU, a group called Mariah. They put on blues festivals, or blues events in the Kiva there, and Muddy Waters came there. I got to see him there. Wow. Willie Dixon was there. There were some national people that did come to town, but it was not that common. But I did get to see a few folks. And so during the 80s, I did see some blues groups, and I Blue Avenue Delegates is somebody I got into. I really liked listening to them. But I was not greatly aware of the full spectrum of blues. But when I saw that festival was going to happen at the Riverfront Park, I went to that, and that's when I met Bonnie. She was passing out the flyers. And I enjoyed the bands that were playing, and I said, well, that's something I'd be interested in. So I was at the first meeting. I was a charter member, and I had done quite a bit of research into the blues, looking at old records and see the original people who were writing the songs and playing the songs that a lot of people later on did. So I was developing an appreciation for that. And when I then got involved in the organization, wasn't long before I started volunteering to write reviews, and I wound up doing several hundred reviews.
Yeah,
over the
I
years.
think Bonnie said somewhere around 1,000.
I think I did around 1,000. I counted up one time. It was that over several years.
So Bonnie, same question. How did you discover the blues? What was that first taste like?
Well, that first taste was instant. It instantly hooked me. I was probably, I'm thinking 8 or 9.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, sleeping on the back porch because back in my days, most houses were not air conditioned. My parents did have a single air conditioner in their bedroom, but they kept the door shut, so it didn't get to the rest of the house or anything. And upstairs, I don't know, because I had a very nice bedroom, 20 by 20, over the garage.
Okay.
And I don't know if that made a difference, because there was no insulation. The heat just kept rising to my bedroom. So I slept on the 3-season porch, and I would have my little transistor radio. And as I scrolled through the dial, I came upon WLAC station out of Nashville,
Sure.
Tennessee. I believe it was called a clear channel. They had 50,000 watts. It could just blast, I guess, wherever in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And once the radio dial hit that WLAC channel, I was just instantly hooked. It was a feeling that I just totally connected with. And part of it probably because I grew up in a dysfunctional, abusive family. So I really needed that connection. And shortly, a few years later, I met some guy, I don't remember his name, that was also totally into the blues. And I was probably 14 and he was 16, and we would go to all the clubs in Detroit.
Okay.
Loved going to all the clubs in Detroit. They didn't check ID. They didn't really care that much.
It was a different time, wasn't it?
It was a totally different time. And we were going to the black clubs and the white ones. And this one that's still in existence is Baker's Keyboard Lounge, which is really, I guess, more noted for its jazz. But back in the day, they were doing a lot of blues. And I swear I saw Odetta there. I saw Gene Krupa. I was a percussionist at heart, so I really loved to see drummers perform. And they had many people that we would go there. It's a very small, as they call, intimate club, a capacity of 99 people. It's still that same size, but it's legendary for being, I think, the oldest continuously open jazz club.
Wow.
Perhaps in the country, certainly in Michigan. And I'm dying to get back there for a couple
We're
more.
going to have to make a trip.
Yes, let's do that.
Seriously,
Yes.
we are.
It's on Livernois. I can't wait to go. Cool.
There's a few places I want to go. I'd like to go to Caju Cafe.
Okay.
I'd like to go to Baker's Keyboard Lounge.
Yeah.
What's a place over in Westland? There's another big place over there that's really Token Lounge.
Oh, okay.
In Westland.
Yeah.
Another great place. They do a little bit of everything. A little classic rock, regular hard rock, blues, you name it. As a matter of fact, Brother Earth plays over there once in a while, and that's a band that was formed by 3 people who toured extensively with Rare Earth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, back in the 80s and 90s and 2000. 80s and 90s, I think, primarily. But anyway. So, Ron, we were talking a little bit ago. You had done about 1,000 or close to 1,000 reviews. I mean, obviously, it was something that you had a passion for, because nobody's going to sit down and review 1,000 CDs for nothing.
Well, he did it for nothing.
Tell me how you got involved in that. Where'd you get the CDs from? And you must have one hell of a collection.
I do have a pretty big one.
Okay.
There was an incentive because for the way it was set up, the Blues Society would, like Bonnie said, she had contacted all the labels and some artists, and they would send us CDs, promotional CDs to review. And they also would provide some revenue through the newsletter, from when we put an ad in for them. So we said, well, we should show our appreciation by writing up something about them, and start doing reviews of them. And again, since the idea was one of the ideas behind the Blues Society was to educate people.
Absolutely.
I felt, well, I'm an appreciation. I have an appreciation for the blues, and I want to share that with people. Yeah, I'm not a musician, but I love the music. And I said, I can write reviews as a person who loves the music, and I know a lot about the different styles from what I've read and what I've listened to. And so I can say, well, if you like so-and-so, you'll love this, or this is the kind of music this guy is putting down. And so I would go through and write reviews. Some are more detailed than others. I mean, there's some, not all of them are great, right?
Oh, I disagree. All of yours were great.
No. I mean, not all the CDs were great.
Oh, well, I did want to interject that sooner or later that Steve and Ron were amazing in their knowledge, not only of the music, of the musicians, but of the instrumentation.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much from, I had been writing reviews. I kind of just backed off, because they were amazing writers about
Steve
these.
was a musician too, and he had a different angle to the way he wrote his than from what I did. But still, the idea was to help people understand what these CDs, what type of music they were,
Sure.
and if you haven't checked this out, you ought to do this. And as I say, I hardly ever pulled any punches as far as, if you get something that really stinks. I had a few that I roasted, but usually I said, this is not my cup of tea, but this is, if you like this, you'll like it. If you like this kind of music, I do it. I was not a real big fan of the more rock style blues people.
Okay.
I liked the old.
So you're a traditional blues fan.
I like traditional, but the peak to me was Chicago blues style. Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, that type of stuff.
Yeah,
and it also was not too polished. I don't like it when it's too smooth.
Right,
I like it when it's a little rough on the edges.
Okay.
Because that shows the emotion behind it. That type of thing. But I love the Fabulous Thunderbirds. I mean, I think they're great. They're a little bit on the rock side, but I love the T-Birds. But I do like the more traditional styles. Lightning Hopkins,
Junior Wells, Buddy Guy.
Buddy Guy. Buddy Guy, not so
AC
much.
Reed.
Not so much Buddy Guy.
No,
I liked a little bit early, but to me,
the early,
he just got a little too crazy for me. But he's pushing the frontiers, and some people like that. I'm not so comfortable with that. But
he just turned 87, so he's got the right to pretty much do whatever he wants.
That's right. That's certainly right. And B.B. King, of course. B.B. King is. I did have the chance to visit his museum and his grave a few years ago.
Wow.
And I went to Robert Johnson's grave too. So that's
And
part of the blues cruise, down the blues trail in Mississippi.
And I heard that Indianola, Mississippi, the I guess the place where BB started, the bar that he started in, is now reopened. It's being maintained by his foundation. So I want to go to Mississippi and check that out.
Yeah, right. One of his tour buses is there at the museum too.
Yep.
And there's a cotton gin building that's on this site of his museum too.
Very cool. Hey, you're listening to Time Signatures. My name is Jim Ervin. I'm here with Queen B, Bonnie Stebbins, and also Ron Eggleston. And we're going to have a second helping here because we are almost out of time already. If you can believe this.
No,
but I have time for one more, and I'm gonna bounce one more question to you, Bonnie. This one's for you.
Okay.
But I know that you talked about a lot of people stepping up early on, including Ron, including Blade, who worked on the newsletter.
Right.
I want to talk about the initial logo for Capital Area Blues Society. Tell that story real quick.
Well, my son was an artist, and I asked him if he would be willing to take a shot at drawing our first logo, and he said sure. And he, I think he was doing his his internship at J&J in New Jersey, and I know that because when I went through the binders. His original sketch is in there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
One of them that you gave Ron?
Right. Yeah. That I don't know if you Yeah,
I didn't look.
Yeah, you'll have to look at those. I don't know if. Well, anyway,
For the listeners, there's a backstory here. I was actually allowed to scan the old newsletters that Queen Bee had in her binders, and I didn't dig into the binders because I didn't want to disturb what was in there.
oh gosh,
And now I'm wishing I would have just dug in
Oh,
and scanned a whole bunch of stuff.
There's
Yes,
all the
of course.
meeting minutes of the board as well as the regular meeting. And Shar was a great secretary.
Oh,
she
she
kept
was
great records.
Shar, our first secretary, again, my friend, Shar Whitaker, did an amazing job with these first 3 binders. I think that carried us through our first 2.5, 3 years, something like that. But no, they are full of memorabilia, flyers, like Ron was saying, minutes and of meetings, minutes of the board meeting, because we had a separate meeting, and then we had the membership meeting. So the board was every 2 weeks, basically, going to meetings and planning, and getting things organized and done. And then you'd have the editors meeting or the newsletter meeting, and all these things were going on. So there was an amazing treasure of early cabs memorabilia in those binders. So when you get a chance, be sure to go through them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk more about the binders coming up in the next episode. We want to thank everybody. Once again, my guests today, Ron Eggleston and Queen B, Bonnie Stebbins. Stick around. We will be back with another episode with these guys, and it's bound to be a good time.
This has been Time Signatures with Jim Ervin, presented by the Capital Area Blues Society in Lansing, Michigan. For more information on cabs, visit capitalareablues.org. You can find this episode and past episodes at lccconnect.org. The Time Signatures theme song, Michigan Roads, is used by permission and was written by Root Doctor, featuring Freddie Cunningham.
I'm trying, baby, driving up and down these Michigan roads, yeah.
Until next time, keep on keeping the blues alive.